Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Benchwarmer podcast. I'm your host, Raffi. As always, I'm joined by the boys, Lucas, Theodore, Davian. I hope you guys are all doing well. There's been a lot that's happened the past few days. I was getting really excited because March Madness is here. We have the conference tournaments that have kicked off. And I was really looking forward to a whole podcast just breaking down the conference tournaments. Obviously, mine would have been busted already with the fact that I would have picked Baylor to win the Big 12. But anywho, still a lot to talk about, and obviously the NFL world the past few days have been absolutely ridiculous. But quickly, let me know how you guys are doing. How the last week's going. Now we're rolling up.
I'm doing great. Fordham, I'm a huge Fordham basketball fan. They just beat George Mason today, and they advanced to the second round of the A10 tournament for the first time in 15 years. Fordham basketball of college athleticism.
I feel like isn't it the team that always wins like 4 games? There's always like that one.
We're on a good year.
Yeah, Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say this is quite easily the busiest week we've had since we started this podcast, and I thought this week was gonna be sort of a slow one, but boy, do we have a lot to talk about. I'm ready to get to it.
All right, I'm going to explain to you. When I saw the Russell Wilson trade, I was sitting in class and I blurted out, "Holy shit." Because, what a trade. We're going to get into that, but yeah, this is, as Lucas said, this is going to be a great podcast because we have so much to talk about. This has been such a busy and crazy week.
Absolutely, it was really funny too because of course I had class for like the hour, so I was taking notes as a good college student would. And after a few hours of studying stuff, I'm like, you know what? We'll take a quick break. We'll head on to social media. There's the Rodgers stuff, which we'll talk shortly. There's Russell Wilson. There's all this stuff. I'm like, of course, like the one time I'm not checking my phone constantly. All this news is breaking. But as you spoke and alluded to just now, Davian, we'll just hop right into the Russell Wilson whole situation, which is crazy. Apparently, this has been going on for the past 2 weeks. The Broncos and Seahawks were in talks with each other about acquiring and trading Russell Wilson. That's finally come to fruition. The official trade is Drew Lock, who is amazing at dancing on the sideline, so the Seahawks have that going for them. Tight end Noah Fant, who's a young guy, so potential there, but he's a tight end. Shelby Harris, who I know a lot of Broncos fans really like. 2 first-round picks, obviously pick 9, which we knew, and even a Rodgers trade would have been included. First-round pick next year, 2 second-round picks, 1 this year, 1 next year, and a 2022 fifth-round pick this year. But let's also not forget that a 4th-round pick will be going along with Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. Theodore, we'll start with you. I want to hear everyone's thoughts right now on this trade as a whole and what the outlook is for both teams per se, or one of them. Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to talk about.
So, all right. So first of all, Denver absolutely had to make this move. They've needed to compete for years. They haven't had a QB since Peyton left. They absolutely had to do it. And Russell Wilson's an exceptional QB. And, giving up the picks and Drew Lock for him, I have no problem with that. Additions of Shelby Harris and Noah Fant in that trade are huge. Those are 2 key starters. Fant was a very good tight end. Harris, I'm going to be honest, didn't know much about him, but I've seen some stuff about him, and he really does look like he's really good. And I know there was a lot of talent on that defense. The fact that you're losing 2 starters, plus your first round, plus the first round pick, and I believe the second round pick this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to add talent. I know they have some money in free agency, but now it just might be a case of them having too many holes on the roster, not enough money to fill them. How stacked that division is. I don't think Denver is going to immediately jump to being a Super Bowl contender. I think they really should have found a way. Even if they gave up just another first instead of those players, they lost too much talent in this trade.
I'd like to throw out there before I give Lucas the opportunity to speak that the Broncos' financial status, according to Over the Cap, is currently now at $26.2 million. So they still have plenty of money. And if Von Miller decides to come back and takes a little discount, I don't know, because they have a lot of good pieces. But Lucas, what are your overall thoughts on the trade, and where does this put the Broncos in terms of the playoff picture come next year?
Yeah, I think the Broncos absolutely hit a home run on this one. It was a trade they absolutely had to make. I'm going to stay away from the Seahawks side of this right now because I think at this point they're just irrelevant. But as far as the Broncos go, I really don't think that they lost all that much when we think about it. Yes, I do like the tight end, and Shelby was a loss. But even with Shelby leaving, I still believe that this is a top 3 defense already.
Yeah.
And that they have the potential still with potentially signing a Von Miller that they could even make it better. But a real thing here is Russell is now about to be, in my opinion, unleashed and actually about to be able to cook as we've been wanting to see him do. Pete Carroll, if it was up to him, would run the ball every single play. There would be no passing. And since Russell Wilson has entered the league, he leads the league in long ball completions and long ball touchdowns. So, and that's playing for Pete Carroll. He's about to be playing in an offense that wants to spread the ball with Nathaniel Hackett, who wants to establish the run game quick to spread out the pass game. Russell is about to be unleashed, and all of his talents are going to be shown with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, that run game that they already have, plus adding Russell to the run game with his escapability. Honestly, in my opinion, this is better than adding Rodgers because you get the leadership, you don't get the drama, and you get the escapability and running ability of Russell Wilson. I think the Broncos absolutely knocked this out of the park. I do think that they're Super Bowl contenders.
2 things to add before I throw it to you, Davian. First off, I believe Denver is the highest in altitude in comparison to every other sports team. So Russell Wilson technically got traded to a place that is closer to God in theory. And the second thing is you mentioning Pete Carroll shifting to a very run-heavy offense sounds kind of weird. I'm sure Davian knows a thing or two about the Seahawks choosing to run the ball, but now I'll throw it over to you, and you can break down your thoughts on the trade.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, when we say Russell Wilson's going to be able to cook, I mean, yeah, he'll definitely be able to cook some weed up in Denver. But yeah, I think it's a good trade from both sides. I think Denver needed. I think Denver needed a QB, and especially that they're now going to have a new ownership. I think you want to have that QB before the ownership really came in, especially considering that the ownership might be Antonio Brown and Kanye West. Rumors, hopefully not. I think that would be just I guess the best word would be a cancer to the league. But again, going back to the trade, I think the Broncos giving up Shelby Harris and Noah Fant. They are tough losses, but you're getting Russell Wilson. You're getting the real deal. As Lucas said, yeah, Wilson's gonna be unleashed, and it's gonna be great to see. As for the Seahawks, I do want to focus more on the Seahawks a bit. I think I think a lot of people are ignoring how good of a trade this was for the Seahawks. I think that Wilson was really unhappy, and so to trade him away, I think you don't lose him in the free agency, so you get some return on him, and the return's pretty good. Yeah, you have the 9th pick. You could pick somebody like Kenny Pickett or some project QB, and then have him back up Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Have a mediocre year, go maybe like 10-7, something like that. Okay, well, they won't go 10-7. My bad. They'll go more like 7-10.
Yes.
And that's a stretch.
Yeah, it is. That is also a stretch. But they're gonna have a good defense. They're gonna. We know Noah Fant is a good ad. They're gonna have a good tight end core. But yeah, no, Pete Carroll will have to switch to run heavy offense, which I know he doesn't like to do.
Yeah, I think the big key, though, is the Seahawks are getting draft picks, and these draft picks in the future are going to be mid to late round picks. So it's essentially, if the Broncos make it far in the playoffs, those are essentially that's essentially in our 2nd and a 3rd round pick, which is, I feel like, a great price for the Broncos to pay. And then you also take into account the fact that the Seahawks can't draft. They have shown that they are terrible at drafting. Aside from Rashad Penny's great final month of the season, he's done nothing to prove, aside from that he's worth a 1st round pick, worth any pick in the draft at that. So it's definitely interesting to see what the Seahawks will do with those picks. Will they trade them for another safety? I guess we'll have to see and find out. But let's move on to the next big quarterback news that took place 2 days ago. Aaron Rodgers is now officially returning to the Green Bay Packers. Davante Adams has been given the franchise tag. I'm sure an extension will get worked out soon. A lot of people, news is going around is a 4-year, $200 million extension. Pat McAfee has come out and said that that's not true. We're going to have to hear from Aaron Rodgers for sure, but let's just go quick around the table. What does this mean for the Packers, and what does this mean for Jordan Love?
Well, first of all, let me just say, Lucas hit it on the head with Russell Wilson being a much better leader. He's what a QB should be. He leads everything I've seen. Teammates love him. Everyone really loves him. Aaron Rodgers is the opposite of that. I know he's got a couple close friends on the team, and then it seems like the rest a little, on the outside. I feel like that's the general vibe I get from him. And I think this does him no favors, spending about, a month and a half just doing nothing but complaining and, all the stuff that happened with his Instagram and all that. And now just to come back as I believe it's going to be the highest per year for a quarterback of all time before Mahomes surpassed him in a couple years. But it's a ridiculously large contract, and I think tensions have got to arise in this locker room at some point. And maybe they have already, and they've just done a good job of masking them. But I think this team is going to start to implode, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because I'm just fed up hearing about it. Hope Jordan Love's gets a shot now.
Yeah,
I'm
for
fed
sure.
up with Rodgers. His antics are just, I personally find them bullshit. They're not leadership like, they're not MVP like either. In any case whatsoever. That's all I have to say on this Rodgers.
Lucas?
I completely agree. I'm tired of the Aaron Rodgers situation. I was tired of it last summer. I'm tired of it now. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is literally turning into Brett Favre at this point, but even more escalated because if Aaron Rodgers is not the center of attention, he will do everything in his power to make sure that he is. And it's just nauseating at this point. I think he's an absolutely phenomenal football player. He's one of the best quarterbacks this league has ever seen, but he is also one of the biggest drama queens this world has ever seen. And it's just, I'm sick of it. I mean, it's a great move for the Packers. I think it's going to affect them in the long term with the money. It's a horrible deal for them financially. And I think they'll work out something with Devontae, which will also strict them. And this team is not going to be as good as they were last year because they are not going to keep everybody. They're most likely going to lose Zadarius and Preston Smith. They can maybe keep one of them, but they're not keeping both. And they're just, with all the money that's going to be flowing into Rodgers and Adams at this point, they're not going to be able to keep a solid roster. But I understand why Rodgers stayed. He did not want the challenge that was involved in being in Denver, going up against Carr, Mahomes, and Herbert all the time. No, he wants to stay in Green Bay and dominate the Lions, the Bears, and the Vikings. Congratulations, Aaron Rodgers. You will have the 1 seed again this year, and you will most likely lose in the first round there.
We have some very big critics of Aaron Rodgers. Jeez, I did not. Few things to highlight before we move on to the next story, next piece of big news. Extension still up in the air, although it's been confirmed by a lot of people. Once again, I'm going to wait and see the official before, as the host, I don't want to spread misinformation because that would not be good. And obviously, Jordan Love's future up in the air, so we don't really know what's happening about that. And honestly, you guys are kind of proving a theory that I had a week or two ago, where it was the Packers organization kind of won. Because at first in April, it was all like, oh, Aaron Rodgers, what's going on? Why does Aaron Rodgers hate us? Blah, blah, blah. And the Packers management was just like, all right, well, Aaron Rodgers is going to start to talk now. And Aaron Rodgers just started talking. He went on Pat McAfee. And that created two groups of people, a very split group. First, there's the people like me that likes hearing Aaron Rodgers talk about things when he's not talking about some of the off-season things he does, which is, don't look it up. It's disgusting. Then there's you guys who don't like Aaron Rodgers because he doesn't shut up and he says really weird things and is clearly a very egoistic person. I think the Packers management had a reason to trade him and make it look like they were the winners and made them look like, oh, we're the good people here. Look, Rodgers was doing this to our team. But anywho, we'll have to see what the extension is and all those details in the future. Now we're just going to go round table. I'm just going to give you guys each something to talk about. Theodore, I'm going to start with you. Khalil Mack, earlier today, was traded for a second, 6th-round pick. What's the outlook for the Bears? Why is it terrible? Your thoughts?
I disagree. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's a deal that makes a lot of sense for this Bears team. I mean, With Aaron Rodgers staying, you know that there's no rebuild happening in Green Bay, and there's really no clear path for Chicago to take the division in the next couple years. Obviously, we see a good amount of QBs take a second-year leap, but I just don't think they can bank on Justin Fields really breaking out just yet. Now, if you look at Khalil Mack, he's still a dominant player, but he's under contract for 3 more years, and his cap hit is going to surpass $20 million next year. I think it makes sense to move on from this guy that really doesn't make a lot of sense long term and will almost definitely by the time his contract is up either be not the same player he was or just another situation where you have to pay a guy a lot of money. So I think the trade makes sense. I think this is a new regime for the one that gave up 2 first-rounders to get him. I think there's a thing, the fallacy of sunk costs where don't hang on to a guy just because you invested a lot into him. I think to get some value for him now versus potentially none down the road makes a lot of sense.
Lucas, I want to now shift over to the Carson Wentz trade to the Washington Commanders, as I like to call them, the commies, which I will continue to say because it's awesome and I love saying that. You have McCarthyism, you have the commies. It's great. I love it all. I'm going to keep saying it. I don't care. Your thoughts on Carson Wentz getting traded, flip for 2 third-round picks. One could potentially become a second-round pick if Carson Wentz plays, I believe, 70% of the snaps. And, yeah, just your thoughts on that, how the Eagles absolutely just fleeced the Colts. And is this good for Washington? Is this more of a stopgap? Your thoughts as a whole? Because I like Taylor Heineke. I like them.
I do think that it's just a stopgap for Washington. I think that Carson Wentz is better than Taylor Heineke, not by a huge stretch, but I think he will give them and offer them more than Heineke can. But I mean, this doesn't really change anything overall about the projection of the Commanders this year. I mean, I still think Dallas wins that division, and I think the Eagles will also be better than Washington. But from the Colts side of this, I understand getting rid of Carson on one hand with his play in the final game, which could have gotten them into the playoffs. He was just atrocious. But also, he was pretty efficient this year, relatively. And I don't know what their plan is now. Who are they looking for? Who's next up? They have Jacob Eason out of Washington on their roster, but I mean, I don't think Jacob Eason is their answer here. And I don't know what other quarterback is out there on the market that they think is going to come in and make this team competitive. I mean, they should have been a playoff team last year.
Book it. We are officially the Mitch Trubisky fan club.
It's probably going to happen. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if that took shape. I don't hate it. I definitely think that he's gotten more hate than deserved, being that he was playing in Chicago. But I don't know. It's just, I'm just confused from the Indianapolis side of it. If they don't have a quarterback in mind, I don't get sending away Wentz for an unknown.
My biggest bet, and we'll get into bets right after this comment. I like that transition a lot. But anywho, with the Colts and Wentz, I think it was the right move. I think the Eagles just fleeced them. I think, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts bring in Jimmy Jesus, the Grappa Goat, some people quote as the hottest man in the NFL. Especially now that Brady's gone. And that's not from me. That's from other sources as well, just to clear that out there.
Maybe now that Brady's gone.
Yeah.
But, anywho, do they look at Jimmy Garoppolo? I think it's very likely that they use the picks that they got from Washington and try to acquire Jimmy Garoppolo. I know you guys were talking a lot about this before in the pre-show group recording, not even recording, but just in the call prior to recording about the Calvin Ridley situation. So I want everyone to kind of just chime in, give your thoughts. I'll start first as a Falcons fan. There's news apparently that the Eagles were going to trade for him. Now I kind of wish that happened. Mental stoppages, taking breaks is always something hard to judge because you don't really know what's going on with someone's life. So you don't want to be too rude. You don't want to say anything that could come off as the wrong way because you don't know what's going on in their lives. But this is such a tiny thing, and it's so. And Lucas, you were talking about this in the pre-show, and I'm sure you're going to mention this again. There's always these like tiny things. Like Josh Gordon came back so many times with all of his shenanigans. Antonio Brown with all of his stuff just keeps coming back. He's going to come back just somehow. And Calvin Ridley, for betting $1,500, is suspended for the whole year, which I understand it's against the league rules, and he should be punished. But just go around the board. We'll start with Davian and your thoughts, because I think it's pretty ridiculous how the NFL just has a weird double standard of how they penalize people.
I mean, I feel like the double standard is clear. I don't think I need to go out and explain that more.
Oh,
I have one question and one question only. Did he win the bet? That's all I have.
I don't know. We do not know. He did bet on the Falcons, I believe, and I probably around November. So the Falcons will win a few games in November. But
Maybe you bet against them.
Lucas, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, listen. I think I do understand the NFL is always going to protect the integrity of the league, but I do feel like, given the context, the penalty was a little too much, considering that other players who have been found guilty and have evidence of committing assault on whomever it may be. I'm not even going to list
Kareem
names.
Hunt. Ray Rice.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes, that was the first person
Still not
in my
over my
mind,
cold.
Kareem Hunt.
My apologies.
Anyways, the fact that they get suspended for maybe 6 games maximum, and Calvin Ridley gets suspended for this long is just absurd. I do believe he should have been suspended because, my opinion, I akin him to Sha'Carri Richardson, the Olympic sprinter who got suspended for marijuana being found in her system. Yes, it's not harming anybody, but the rules are the rules. And Calvin Ridley himself acknowledged that he knew he broke the rules. If you know the rules, you know the consequences of breaking them. And that's basically all I can say for it.
Theodore, your thoughts?
Okay, I have to disagree with you two here in a big way. I completely understand where you're coming from consistency-wise. I think a lot of serious crimes get overlooked in the name of, the fact that the guys committing them are talented players, and I think that's wrong. However, slope. If you guys remember, historically, 1919 White Sox cheating scandal, that almost destroyed the sport of baseball. CCNY, City College of New York, won 1950s. They were a powerhouse. There was a whole point shaving scandal with their teams. That was with them and I believe NYU as well, who were powerhouses at the time. That could have destroyed college basketball because there was some serious stuff going on. The NCAA steps in, gets those programs completely torn apart. They're Division III schools now. And because of that, because of the strict action that they took, this isn't an issue we're dealing with. Now, as we enter the age of legal sports gambling, the NFL and every other league has to ensure that there is nothing going on here, because Calvin Ridley, even if he's betting on his own team, insider information that he has, so much stuff that he has that most people don't, and he could very easily, be selling information out or, doing anything. I seriously don't think Calvin Ridley was doing any of that. I think he was just, in a bad place, placed a $1,500 bet on his team, and that's the end of it. But I think he kind of has to, unfortunately, be used as a scapegoat here to ensure that, to let every pro athlete in the world know that this will not be accepted from anyone. And I think it's a sad situation, but it had to happen.
Yeah, obviously, one thing that I like to just have as a moral is just to wait for all the details. So we'll certainly give updates on the situation as we hear more. But let's move on to what was supposed to be the main topic of the show this week, but that was before the events of Tuesday and the past few days of the NFL football world. And let's just go through the Power 5 and Big East and give our conference tournament picks. I will say that I was going to pick Baylor to win the Big 12. Unfortunately, that is not the case anymore. So I will stick with Baylor, but we will just note that Baylor just lost. Not even hour after we have started this recording. But we'll start off with the Big 12, as I was just mentioning Baylor. Theodore, your pick. We're just going to go around the board for all of these. And
TikTok dropping later tonight on this. I just recorded it before the show. I love this Oklahoma Sooners team. They are very consistent. They have an 8-man rotation. Everyone can step up. They've got the Groves brothers out of Eastern Washington, who almost upset Kansas last year. They play great together. Porter Moser is an exceptional coach. What he did at Loyola was incredible, and he's really found his stride lately in the past couple weeks of the season. Oklahoma not only will win the Big 12, but they will go on a deep tournament run. Book it now.
Lucas.
Honestly, I haven't been keeping up with this conference as much as I have wanted to, but if I'm not mistaken, I've been so caught up in the news going on lately. Rutgers is still in it, correct?
Wrong conference.
Rutgers is in the Big 10.
I don't know what my mind's scattered all over the place right now, actually.
Say Kansas and we'll just move on. Say Kansas and
actually, yes. Actually, Kansas is a good pick. That's entirely my fault. My mind's scattered right now.
It's all good. Just remember, in a few years, Rutgers, they're coming to the Big 12. Honestly, it's probably better than the Big 10. I'm just going to put it out there because, yeah. Davian.
I got no picks. I'm going to be honest. College basketball, I put a note for myself. Start looking into it. Start, reading it up. March Madness is right around the corner. And then bang, all this NFL news comes in, and I'm just like, personally, I'm just so drawn to the NFL. I just got no picks. I'm just here for the ride. I want to see good games. I want to see some March Madness, of course, and hopefully it'll be fun.
You look up those brackets right now, and you give me.
Yeah, I know how passionate you are about this, Raffi. I've seen.
I make conference tournament brackets every year. I love this so much. I made a TikTok last week saying if we get this many followers, I'll make that many brackets. We have 2 followers, and you better bet that I will be making way more than 2 brackets while I'm on my winter spring break actually next week. But anywho, let's move over to the ACC then. Davian, Lucas, if you have any thoughts, feel free to chime in. But I'll keep this between me and Theodore with our picks. Theodore, who do you have playing the ACC?
I like Duke. I mean, they struggled against Syracuse. It's the boring pick. I know we all love to hate on Duke, but it's Coach K's final year, so I think we can expect some favorable calls down the stretch of games.
Favorable calls against Duke? No, it's not like that happened earlier today, and I'm not salty about it at all.
And at the end of the day, they're the most talented team. I don't think we can deny that. I think we can all let's just all hope that I don't know how the bracket lines up. Let's hope we get Duke UNC at some point.
I agree. I think it's Duke. Unfortunately, I always love watching Syracuse in March. They're always my favorite team to kind of pick. They're always the bubble team that I always like to root for. I actually do have a Syracuse shirt. I don't know if I wore it for a podcast, but I did wear it today for the most part. And you can never count out the Qs. The Qs is always loose. I love that. We're going Qs.
I do agree, Duke in the ACC.
Yes.
As much as I don't want to say it, I do agree they are the most talented.
Absolutely, and it doesn't take you don't need to watch too much college basketball this year to just call it Duke because the ACC has been very disappointing this year. Let's move on now to the Big 10, which is my conference as an University of Illinois student. I am practically obligated, I feel like, at this point to say that Illinois will be winning the Big 10. I think that they're just head over heels better than everyone else. I think Purdue is my upset pick. I don't like Purdue at all this year. They've just been too shaky. I had a chance to watch Arizona. We'll get into my Pac-12 pick. That was nice seeing both teams play in person. But I got Illinois. I wouldn't be shocked if Wisconsin wins, but right now I got Illinois. Theodore?
I'm going to go with a bit of an upset, which is they're ranked teams, so not much of an upset. But I'm going to go with Iowa. I really love this program year in and year out. They're one of the most consistent squads out there. And if you look at this Big Ten, it's just such a coin toss. How do you possibly definitively say that one team is better than the other? So I'm going to go with Iowa. I think Fran McCaffrey is a great coach, and They just dropped 112 points on Northwestern, which
I don't
yes,
want to talk about it.
Northwestern.
I
So
don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Before my Illinois college experience, I was a Northwestern fan. I still am a Northwestern fan growing up around Chicago. So it was a bit disappointing to see Northwestern get absolutely demolished like that. I wish there was a way we could tell which team's better between Iowa and Illinois, because it's not like they played against each other like a few days. That didn't happen. Davian, you were nodding your head throughout, so I'm assuming that you do have some thoughtful insight.
I do have one pick. This is the only pick that I've ever had, and that's Rutgers. Look, I've not been following college basketball, but because I'm from the great state of New Jersey, my friends have been crazy about Rutgers. I'm picking Rutgers to take the conference. Why? I don't really know. I've seen some crazy upsets by them. I think they're one of the biggest dark horses. I'm picking Rutgers.
They did
Raffi,
pull off a bunch of upsets, so I'll give you that. Yeah, Theodore?
I need to get this man removed from the podcast because I believe he just said the great state of New Jersey. I think something must be wrong with this man.
I completely missed that.
Hey, don't hate on New Jersey. We're great.
I do want to say I agree that conference really is a toss up right now. I'd say there's about 4 teams that I wouldn't even be surprised if they won. But I am gonna go with Wisconsin right now, mostly because of them winning the regular season title. I like the momentum they have. I did watch them in the game that they won the title from, and I just like the momentum they have. So I'm gonna roll with Wisconsin.
I don't like to be that guy. I never am this person. I didn't like to do it on my old podcast. I don't like to do it now. But I will say, Illinois, they beat Iowa, so they're the number 1 seed.
Okay, it's the
regular
conference
season
tournament. The rest of the season gets thrown out the window.
Illinois, the best college basketball team since last year. We all know how that went. Thank you, Loyola Chicago. That was a great game. All right, let's move on to the Pac-12. And this is where I watched Arizona play Illinois in person. It was a game where Illinois should have legit blown Arizona out by 20 points, if not more. Arizona looked terrible the whole game. If it wasn't for Kofi Coburn being for how big of a dude he is, he just could not hold the ball in his hands. He was always bobbling it everywhere. It was one of his worst games I've ever seen in person. Anywho, I'm gonna go UCLA. I just like them a lot more. Johnny Juzang, I think they're going to build off the 11 seed run they had last year, and I think UCLA is going to just run through the Pac-12. Oregon is just such a disappointment. I don't want to talk about Oregon. Their whole sports program I don't like for no particular reason. They're just a disappointment. And yeah, so I'm going to go UCLA, and Arizona is also on my upset picks, which we will talk about next week. Theodore.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is just such a tough one. I don't like staying up until. I love college basketball, but staying up until 1 a.m. out on the East Coast to watch is tough. So I never really have a great gauge of these teams. So I always have a tendency to look at them and call them, generally overrated. But most years I'm correct because last year with UCLA making the Final Four was the first time in, I forget how many years, but a long time that a team west of Texas made it. So usually these teams don't make much noise. Which is why I'm probably going to pick, Arizona as one of those top seeds that gets eliminated in the round of 32.
Yeah. Yes.
But for now,
I like where you're going with that for a second. I thought you were going to say Arizona's going to win the Pac-12. I was like, no. But continue on.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Colorado. I think they have a very balanced team.
What?
I think they're a bit of a dark horse. They've been consistent all year. They surpassed 20 wins a couple nights ago. They're a solid team. They don't stand out in any way, but they're a tournament caliber team, and I think they'll prove that.
Colorado is not even in the bracketology. So I find that to be kind of a ridiculous take. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, well.
But we'll see what happens.
Arizona are playing each other in the semifinal, I believe. Whereas Colorado just has to get past USC, which is a team I don't really believe in this year.
I don't believe in USC either this year.
My pick is USC.
Okay.
I'm picking.
Would you
USC.
care to expand on your knowledge of USC?
Knowledge. I'm not gonna. I'm in the same category as Theodore here on the East Coast. I don't get to watch many Pac-12 games, but I do. I know about the Andy Enfield extension through I believe 2028, and I think he's a really good coach. I think that they have a lot of young talent on here, but I also do like what Isaiah Mobley has been doing. I've seen some really good film from him throughout this year. I do agree that I think Arizona could end up just being one of these. I do think they could also probably win it, but the teams that have like these 3 losses, we do tend to see them losing when it counts. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did get upset. So I'm just going to roll with USC. Go Trojans.
Now we'll move to the Big East. We'll do this really quickly. Providence just barely beat Butler. Obviously, now that I'm kind of thinking about this, it's going to likely be uploaded on Saturday. So you'll know basically the final matchups. But regardless, you'll get to hear us try to chirp each other about who's actually going to win. And you guys, as the viewer, will know who's talking out of their butt and who sounds really stupid by the time in the future when you are watching this. But anywho, let's go to the Big East real quick. Let's just say the name. I'm going Villanova. Both them and Providence won very close, but I'm going Villanova. Let's just go quick and then move on to the SEC. Theodore.
I'm going Creighton. I love this Blue Jays team. Again, I like consistency in programs. They're one of those consistently good teams. They solid fight, I believe, against Gonzaga last year in the Sweet 16, and they will be back this year. I don't know if they'll go that far, but I think they're a good team. I think that Villanova UConn matchup, because I believe UConn's up big right now, so I believe that should be the matchup next round. I think it'll be a very tough one. Whereas Providence, a lot as a team, they just struggled mightily against Butler. And, not a lot of momentum going in, whereas Creighton is very motivated because they're still kind of hanging out in the bubble and they really need that one win to shore up their spot in the tournament. So I like the Blue Jays here.
I don't know at this point if you're just randomly picking schools in each thing or you're choosing you're giving me like I picked the mascots for my bracket kind of vibe right now.
Okay.
But anywho, before we wrap up the show, let's go to the SEC. It was all right, bananas.
I do want to say I think Providence wins.
We will, and then I believe you mentioned earlier that you have them winning the whole tournament, the NCAA.
As of right now, that is subject to change.
We will see how that changes in the next week.
I got
Lucas right around Georgia does not need to worry about any college basketball going on in the state of Georgia.
Certainly not.
Georgia is absolute buns. But let's quickly go through SEC. This is hard. I'm gonna go Tennessee. I liked how they played versus Auburn, and they played really well versus Arkansas. When I watched them last week, yes, they blew, I believe it was a 20-point lead, but they still hung on. I think they're probably the hottest team coming down the stretch in the SEC, so I got Tennessee, but Kentucky looks really good this year, and that's the first time.
Yeah.
Theodore, give me a concise pick.
I was gonna go Tennessee. I really like this team. I think they're primed for a deep run, but I'm gonna go Kentucky. I don't even think I need to explain myself here. I think we'll see Kentucky and Tennessee go on deep runs in the tournament, though.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And we will break down the March Madness tournament come next week. I'm very excited about it, as I've expressed clearly. And yeah, that's kind of a wrap on the show. Obviously, we did have MLB coming back earlier today, which is something that we can definitely hit on in the future. So I'm not too worried about that. But aside from that, good show, boys. It was lovely talking to you guys once again. If you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe to our channel. We are now getting out YouTube videos, which is awesome. Special shout out to Davian for editing those. We appreciate it a lot. If you don't want to look at our faces, we completely understand. You can listen to us on Spotify if you'd rather do that as well too. Be sure to give us a good rating. And that's all. Also, follow us. One last thing. Follow us on the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. Once again, I will be making brackets for every follower, but also just follow us to just keep posted on the latest stuff that we're talking about. A lot of 1 minute long clips. So if you don't really like listening to these long things, you want to hear some shorter new stuff that we're talking about, definitely would go to the TikTok at Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Theodore is making one. That's going out tonight as we are recording. You guys will see it by then, by the time the show is posted and by the time you're watching this. But anywho, that's all I got there. I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed watching, and we will talk to you guys again soon. Have a good night.
Peace.